What is going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today I want to talk to you about SoFi. SoFi has gone down quite a lot since their Q2 earnings. So I want to go over some of the data points, what they're saying, some of the latest updates from the company, and everything else that you need to know. Make sure that first hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that, let's get right to it. So like I said, ever since their kind of high of $11.70 as a result of their Q2 earnings, I did feel based on the technicals it did need to pull back. Even though their Q2 earnings was phenomenal, just it needed to pull back a little bit. But this is kind of extreme. So with it being at $9.32, it definitely should not be here. So we're once again kind of in the whole scenario where it just does not make sense. But of course, over the last little bit, there has been quite a lot of fear. There's been nothing out from the company as far as SEC filings or press releases. So it is just merely following the broader market, which right now is a little bit fearful. And then as well, CPI is coming out this Thursday. So depending on that, that might be the saving grace for this downtrend, not necessarily just with SoFi, but bigger picture, or it might be the demise. So once again, definitely a very interesting point to watch for. When it comes down to SoFi, this was posted by Riley on Twitter, and it just puts it in perspective on how people are still continuously searching SoFi. So it's definitely a very popular investment and a very popular stock to be in, despite the pullback. So I'm going to go over a lot of things, one of which is just starting off with the intraday. So looking right here, there is currently 11.94 million shares being traded. 62.5 is the average. And you can kind of tell just generally it is a little bit lower for volume because based on this, there's only been one transaction over $100,000 on the secondary market, and that was for 1.67 million. It was a buy. You can tell that based on the bid, the ask, and the selling price, but still generally only one transaction. That is normally or that's just very abnormal, I guess, per se. As far as this is also abnormal. So these are all the transactions that have occurred today on the dark pool. Dark pool is very much linked to shorting and stuff like that, but it is interesting to see that there's only been 3 transactions. So once again, kind of off in that regard. And finally, it seems like the trifecta, number of retail investors are also just getting out today based on the momentum indicators. So very interesting stuff. Looking at stochastic though, it is at 35, a little bit more of a bearish sentiment is right now, or at least forming. And today, unfortunately, it did transition from the higher to the lower percentile of the Bollinger Band. So as far as some points to really watch for, with it being at $9.33, it is between this S1 and the pivot. So $10.34 is that next big resistance. $8.87 is that next big support. And as I've brought up, the spread on this, or all of these levels, are pretty wide. So that does mean that there is going to be a lot of volatility, at least in the short term. So you just have to be kind of comfortable with that. So in my opinion, potentially given how things are going, we might actually touch this $8.87 and trend up from that. But who knows? Anything could potentially happen. As far as options activity today, there's currently $2.8 million in calls being purchased versus 1.82 million in puts. So still a lot more puts than normal. So insinuating there is a chance that people are assuming that SoFi is going to continue to trend down from here, but clearly there's a lot of optimistic individuals. If you are bullish, and this is all the call options, the strike prices, expiry dates, it is anticipated for this upcoming Friday to kind of close between around the $9 to $10 range. So definitely kind of in line with where it's at right now. And with all the data that I did say, it's kind of interesting to see what shorts are doing. So I'll give you guys a good overview of that. And as I've said in the past, based on the data points, I don't feel that SoFi is a good squeeze stock, but it's good to bring this up as a benchmark. So short score is currently 56, utilization is 23.36%. And based on this today, what shorts are doing, they're returning around 44,000 shares, which is kind of a drop in the bucket. And once again, if you interpret this with it being a red day and them returning some shares, they kind of see it as a little bit more of an overreaction a little bit. If not, they would be really increasing their position pretty significantly. Cost to borrow average is 0.94%, so kind of pennies in that regard. 14.83% of the free float is being shorted. 119.37 million shares overall are being shorted. So once again, definitely very interesting stuff behind the scenes. I'll give you guys a good overview. Based on the latest Morningstar report, it looks like they did reiterate $14 being the fair market value for SoFi. So once again, just be aware of that. As far as some of the latest analyst ratings, I'll give you guys that. So over, looks like 5 days ago, Dan from Mizuho did give a $15 price target, but other than him, that was the last one. Dan does actually have a pretty okay, so it's around a 50% success rating, and then Kevin 62%, 58%, 57%. So once again, a lot of interesting things behind the scenes, but given the nature of where the market is going, I do feel that it is going to pull back down a little bit and potentially, like I mentioned, touch this 887. But once again, like I've signaled many times, even when this was at $5, you do have to think bigger picture. SoFi is a very disruptive stock, and they're trying to disrupt one of the oldest sectors in the whole stock market. So it's not a easy job. It's going to be very, very difficult. But eventually, as what we have seen over the last little bit, it is going to stand to be very beneficial if you hold, especially more so long term. So let me know your guys' thoughts on SoFi. Give yourself a shout out if you have been buying, selling, holding. What is your take on SoFi, and where do you see things going? Do you think that it is going to be touching around the high 8s? Do you think it's going to break lower than that? Or do you think it's just going to go from here back up to 10? So what's your viewpoint on all this? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's all make a lot of money on SoFi.